Last year, McKinsey and Company launched an exciting report, Women in the Workplace 2021. This report is the most extensive study of the state of women in the corporate world in the United States. Today, in this episode, with my guests, I will discuss some outcomes of this exciting report that I recommend analyze. Welcome to Podcast and Business. I am Juan Carlos Giraldo from Boston, United States. And today, my guests are Susanne Althoff and Shannyn Smith. Susanne is the author of the book Launching Wild Female, Smashing the System That Holds Women Entrepreneurs Back, based on more than 100 interviews with women and non-binary entrepreneurs across the United States. She's also an associate professor at Emerson College in Boston, where she teaches publishing, entrepreneurship, and innovation, and is advisor to student startups. And my second guest is Shannyn Smith, MBA, is the founder of the Capital Boutique, where she connects female founders in STEM with female funders to increase access to capital. She's also an innovator in residence at the MIT Innovation Initiative. Shannyn is a tribal member of the Shinnecock Nation on Long Island, New York. Hello, Susanne. How are you? Good to have you today as a guest on my podcast again. How are you?
Good morning, Juan Carlos. It's wonderful to be back to your podcast. Thank you.
Thank you. Shannyn, thank you so much for your time. I'm very glad to have you as a guest, and it's your first podcast. Happy to have you. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. And it's a pleasure to be on the podcast, especially with Susanne.
Thank you so much. I would like to start this conversation by asking you guys, what is the impact of having this type of report, the McKinsey report, and how does it help women in the corporate world? I would like to know the opinions of you both about this very interesting and very exciting, very detailed report that this very interesting and famous consultant company as McKinsey just shared the last year. What are your thoughts about that? Maybe we can start with Susanne.
Thank you, Juan Carlos. Yeah, you used the word detailed and famous, and you're absolutely right that those are the qualities of the report. This is the 7th year that McKinsey and leanin.org have examined the experiences of women in the workplace. This latest report featured the responses of 65,000 people. So it's an extensive piece of research. It brings crucial attention to the experiences of women in the corporate workplace. And I especially appreciate the intersectional nature of this work. The researchers are highlighting how the workplace experiences of women of color can be so much more challenging than what white women experience. Further, the researchers are looking at women with disabilities and LGBTQ plus women and showing that their differences can be so different than other women. So to me, that's one of the most important aspects of the study.
Great. Shannyn, please.
Sure. So the transparency in data reporting is really critical because just as Susanne pointed out, the experience of women in color is even more challenging than white women. And so this type of reporting and research reveals for whom the DE&I initiatives are working. And furthermore, it really challenges corporations to do more and maybe more precisely address some of those challenges facing women of color, but also women with disabilities. In the report, there's maybe two pages. So where more work needs to be done is also the impact of the report.
I would like to add that when I read the whole report, I feel that companies want to address this issue. However, in my opinion, it's not enough. So I would like to start this question with Susanne. One of the most critical part of McKinsey report, Susanne, is that the allyship gap still exists and persists, which is more concerning, I would say. I want to ask you, why is that and how to reduce this gap, Susanne?
Absolutely. Yes. This was a key part of the report. The researchers found that women in the workplace are more likely than men to engage in allyship actions. So for example, this might look like offering mentorship to women, pushing for promotions and other job opportunities, and addressing discrimination. So women are stronger allies than men typically. However, the report made the important point that white women need to do more active allyship work. A lot of white women talk about the importance of allyship, but we are not seeing enough of the hard work that is necessary. I appreciate that the report highlighted that. And the report also underscored how important this allyship is. When employees have strong allies, they are happier, less burned out, less likely to consider leaving their jobs. And the report noted how prevalent burnout is, especially during COVID-19. And so this allyship is important. So, for example, in my own interviews, I've seen men question the need for allyship. There is a mistaken belief that if a woman works hard and everyone will see the results and she will therefore get promoted and no further effort is needed. And, the report makes it clear. And then, of course, women have seen this, and women of color especially have seen this. So men, white women need to acknowledge that just sitting on the sidelines and hoping for the best and putting a nice phrase on their social media posts is not enough. So the researchers were saying, well, what do we do? Well, there's one suggestion that I think is really valuable is to formalize this allyship. So what this means is on everyone's performance evaluation, whether it's done quarterly or at the end of the year, having space on that performance evaluation to ask, what have you done to hire women and women of color and women with disabilities and LGBTQ women? What have you done to ensure their promotions? And, certainly when we are in the corporate workplace, we're considering promoting someone, we need to ask, yes, we ask already about, do you meet your deadlines? Are you on budget? But we also need to ask, what work have you done to promote inclusion and equity in the workplace?
To me, it's something very interesting. It's like to reduce this gap, this allyship gap that you just mentioned. Leadership and mentorship are essential, are critical in the corporate world. So I would like to ask Shannyn, this McKinsey report shows us that women are more active champions of diversity, equity, and inclusion and drive better outcomes for all employees. It's a fact. The graphics are there. And they really like be a mentor more than men. It's something very interesting. What exactly means for you be a champion and mentorship? I would like to know your thoughts.
Sure. So first I'll share that I am a Native American woman in biotech pharma in Boston, and I never had a mentor, never had a sponsor. Allyship has not existed in my career path, and that's why it's so important to me to be a mentor. And even beyond that, to me, allyship means mentorship, but also sponsorship. So that way you are advocating for other women. And just to Suzanne's point, that white women, white men all have a part to play in being an ally. And there's a concept of pattern matching. And so you are more likely to connect with someone who looks like you. And so in order to be a better ally, it's identifying people who do not look like you to really form that connection and sponsor and mentor. And even in the article, it shows the pipeline that women of color and white women, the representation in the pipeline from entry level to C-suite, and that dip for women of color. And so allyship can really, really make a difference. And because I did not have that, that's why it's so important for me. And so advancing women has been a hallmark of my career from very early on.
That's amazing. That's a very interesting answer. Shannyn, the report also presents us managers, women, are doing more to support their teams. It's something very interesting. Obviously, again, more than men. Another point that this report shows us, Susanne, is intersectionality experience. The respondent mentioned they face sexism, microaggressions, being interrupted or spoken over, and comments about their emotional state. That's something that is not tolerated. What tools you would suggest to work against these behaviors? Not just, probably this podcast is a tool, but I think it's more good in details, and it's more challenging because we are living in COVID. We are working from home. How or what tools are essential to reduce, to work on it, Susanne?
Absolutely. So let me just, to ground the discussion, I want to cite some details that the report offered on microaggressions. The report noted that in the corporate world, women experience more microaggressions than men. And Juan Carlos, as you were just describing, being interrupted, spoken over, having your expertise questioned. So women experience more microaggressions than men, but women of color, women with disabilities, LGBTQ plus women receive the even higher levels of microaggressions than white women, and the toll of these microaggressions is significant. It's the researchers found this in their work, that when you experience microaggressions, you have feelings of burnout, you are more than twice as likely to feel negatively about your job, increased chance of leaving your workplace. So what do? We know that microaggressions happen, they are widespread. Mobilizing bystanders is such a crucial part of microaggressions. And so this can take several forms. It could be speaking up and addressing inappropriate comment in the moment, during the meeting or during some workplace conversation. It could mean later, after the fact, confronting the person who was doing this microaggression and explaining to them the harm that they are causing, the inappropriateness of their comments. And it could also mean approaching the person who was the target of the microaggression and letting them know you heard it, you agree with them, it was significant, it was wrong, and you support them. This importance of bystanders is so important. I study especially the publishing industry, and there was a report last year about racism in the book publishing industry. And this was a theme that came up again and again from survey respondents. They told stories of, being in a meeting, being subjected to an ugly comment, and all of their white colleagues just sat in the meeting in silence. And, they were just hoping the moment would pass, and how this was sort of a double injury. The microaggression in itself is harmful, but then the silence of your white colleagues is a double whammy. So the report says that we need to do more. We need to address this microaggressions that are happening in the workplace. One important recommendation was the importance of offering training in bias and anti-racism and in allyship to employees, and to offer it, to require it. Employees are showing it in action. And then self-education is so important. Juan Carlos, you mentioned listening to this podcast is step one. Absolutely. Listening to podcasts, reading books. This is especially, I am a white woman, and I'm going to say this to white listeners. Self-education is so important.
So important.
Read the McKinsey report, understand the issues, and know
Exactly.
that you have an active role as a white person, and you need to educate yourself. You should not be leaning on your colleagues of color to help you learn and understand what's going on. You educate yourself, and then you become an active ally.
Exactly. I want to ask to Shannyn to change these behaviors, or or to reduce the gap of these behaviors or microaggression, etc. To me, the most important is actions, decisions, change the attitude. This report, Shannyn, summarized that driving change, companies need to invest deeply in diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm not talking about money, to accelerate progress for all women in all fronts. You came from startups, and when I read the Susanne books, it was very concerning to me as well what women face in the startup world. However, in your experience, where can we start in these challenging times that we are living right now, based in this report?
In the report, in the summary, it described how leaders can actively participate in programs and events as a way to demonstrate commitment. But to your point, Juan Carlos, the investment goes beyond money, and being a bystander of sorts in programs and events internally is really not the place to start. And I agree with Susanne about the, let's say, unconscious bias training, anti-racism training. But even before that, it's creating this foundational knowledge and understanding and recognition of the system dynamics that hold back certain groups of people. And that becomes the why behind whether it's diversity metrics or types of initiatives to support working mothers. So it's really the investment in education upfront. And then I think also one of the actions, because you asked about that as well, one of the actions was that companies are taking is tying their performance bonuses to some of these metrics. And that really is a way that's a commitment tool to tie DE&I metrics or progress against them to performance bonuses. And I would say that's beyond the managers who are working with employees every day. That's the leadership team, because otherwise it becomes DE&I can become more of a marketing tool. So that's where the investment comes in. I think the other area, the investment in DE&I, is to think about not just internally, DE&I looks like, but also externally. What types of suppliers do you have? A diverse roster of suppliers. Where are you committing your philanthropic dollars? Is it to nonprofits where the leadership team and the board are all white, or are these in companies who are supporting communities, and that those communities are reflected in the leadership team? So I think that's what the investment can look like, both internally, that's not related to having events. It's beyond the events and commitment can be more action oriented.
Exactly. It's like has to do with the internal client and with the external client. Shannyn, is there anything that you would like to add? Something that I want to ask you. Yesterday I was thinking a woman who's working right now in the corporate and having all this situation all the time. I feel frustrated, of course. We have to feel empathy with them. Is the option quit corporate and starting startups? Or like, you know, I I want to fight it with my colleagues. I want to reduce this gap and keep going. What are your thoughts?
Sure. So can I answer it as it depends? So there is certainly an opportunity in corporate if you're at a level, let's say you're VP and above, and you can have real impact while continuing to advance your career. Makes sense to remain. The other thing to think about, and Susanne covers this in her book, is the wealth gap and how that inhibits women of color from being entrepreneurs because there isn't that financial, let's say, safety net. And so it's a big risk to go out into the startup world. So that's why it depends. It depends, and it depends on where you see your career advancing. I was in big pharma, and
Me too.
oh yeah,
Yes.
we have to talk a little bit then. And I was marketer of the year. I thought I was on track to be with this company for the rest of my career. And there was an opportunity presented to me to move to another product. And so I thought, okay, well, how can this help with my career growth here? And the response was, well, it's not about your career growth. We have a spot to fill, and the role that you have could really be a growth opportunity for someone else. So that's what Susanne was talking about, being interrupted, microaggression. This was really the moment when I realized the meritocracy doesn't exist, because I thought in working hard, it would lead to advancement. So this was a white woman telling me that my career didn't matter. I wound up leaving, but that didn't mean that, could I have remained? Possibly, but I didn't see my career really being able to move forward. But I didn't go right into startup. So as adventurous as I am, I have that. I don't have a financial safety net, and so my startup is really my passion project on the side. So I'm able to stay in a corporate job, although in startup, and then also have my startup and do research with MIT.
Oh, that's great example. Susanne, anything that you would like to add, according to your experience, according to this report, or something that you would like to just simply add to this topic, which is very intense and very interesting, exciting topic?
Thank you, Juan Carlos. I would love to follow up on Shannon's really important point. When doing interviews of women entrepreneurs and non-binary entrepreneurs, I heard the exact things that Shannyn is describing. Women who have received perhaps some promotions but are not seeing the speed of advancement that they know they deserve and that their hard work deserves, are making this decision: should I stay or should I leave and start my own business? To Shannon's point, 100%, you need a pool of money to make this possible, right? You need to know that you're going to have health insurance when you make this leap. So this was something that the entrepreneurs I interviewed, this was a really challenging issue. I want to be the CEO. Should I start my own company to achieve that, or stay with this company? And what are all the factors in play? I do want to note in my research that microaggressions occur in the entrepreneurial space. So leaving the corporate world does not mean you get to say goodbye to all of the rotten stuff we've been talking about. Women entrepreneurs, non-binary entrepreneurs, especially entrepreneurs of color, are experiencing microaggressions in advisor meetings and investor meetings, working with vendors and customers. So it's the study that we're talking about today focuses on the corporate world. We're seeing this in non-corporate workplaces. So it's unfortunately widespread experience for women, especially women of color and disabled women and LGBTQ women. So So we have our work cut out for us in this country and beyond.
Exactly. And here we are. I think this episode focusing in the McKinsey report. I encourage to listeners to read the report. It's not just, okay, retweet and that's it. Read and interpret it in our own way. What is the outcomes of this report? It's very, very interesting. Shannyn, your final thoughts on where people can contact you.
Sure. So you can find me on LinkedIn, /Shannyn, SHANNYN, or email is Shannyn@thecapitalboutique.com.
Great. Susanne, maybe you have a final thoughts or where people can contact you about your book as well. Please feel free.
Thank you. The best place to get in touch with me is through my website. There's a contact form there, and my website is SusanneAlthoff.com.
Thank you, Shannyn, for your time.
Thank you, Juan Carlos. Such a pleasure. And thank you, Susanne.
Thank you, Susanne, for your time.
Thank you for having me today. It's a pleasure being with you and with Shannyn, and this is such an important subject. I agree with your point that I hope podcast listeners go now and read the McKinsey report and make a commitment which of the suggestions they're going to implement today.
I bet they will. I am Juan Carlos Giraldo from Boston, United States. Thank you so much, everyone.